Today's video, I'm going to show you a secret drum mixing trick to show you how to get your drums to sit right in the mix every single time. Let's hop in and I'll show you what I'm working on. Just to kind of give you guys a taste of the vibe of the track, I'll play a little bit of the chorus. Alright, so the drum part sounds good, but the snare sounds a little weak. So let's go to our snare here. And this is what it sounds like soloed up. And it has a little bit of room noise in the sample, which I like. Now I went ahead and applied a little bit of compression and a little bit of this red light distortion. So that kind of helps it to cut. But I still feel like that this drum track, it needs something more for that snare. Now, I went ahead and did a couple more layers, and just to solo them up here, this is what our chorus sounds like right now. So we kind of have a gospel style groove. We have some loose claps, but we kind of have that real tight up-tempo groove happening. And in the textures of everything that's going on in the chorus, I feel like I lose my snare a little bit. Studio One makes it super easy to add layers to your drums, and I'll show you guys how I do this. Now I know that I have a snare part that I'm committed to. All the hits are where I want them to happen, so I'll come up here and select the quantize function. Instead of using the grid mode, we use the groove mode. But I'll do it again just to show you guys. If you take an audio track and drag it in to this section up here in Studio One, it splits it out and it basically takes it transient by transient. And what's cool about this is it converts it to MIDI. So now what I can do is come over here, grab an Impact XT, and what we're going to do is add another sample to our snare. So I'll come in here, I'll find a sample that I like. I usually will drag it on the grid somehow here in Studio One. I won't use it on the grid, but just to kind of so I can pull it from here and drag it right there. Now that's what our sample is going to sound like. I'll delete this from dragging it in the session. And now I can come back here and drag from this section and pull in a MIDI file. And what's cool about this MIDI file is if you zoom in, every hit is going to be right on where your drum hit was. And what's cool about this is we don't have to go transient by transient and line everything up. Studio One has done that already for us. So all we have to do is just solo these tracks up and make sure that our layers are triggering. So I see a signal happen, but it's not triggering on the right note. So I'll double click in my MIDI and I can tell that it's the wrong C note. So let me just go ahead, drag everything up. Now I can hear the layers here. And you can hear this extra layer. That's without the extra snare layer. But when we add this extra layer in with Impact XT, it brings a low presence into our track that's really going to help it cut. Now listen to our snare in the chorus. Here, I'll take it out on this next part. So it's one of those perspective things. Now, when we first listened to this track, the drums sounded good. They're programmed very well, the samples sound really good, but adding this extra snare sample really helps the snare drum cut in the mix. And having samples soloed out like this, of course, we can add a little bit more compression to it. Just a little bit to tighten it up. Maybe add a little bit more of that red light distortion, just like we did on the other snare drum. And then maybe add just a little bit of reverb to it. And again, this blend That blend on your snare drum is just going to help it cut that much more. Last thing that I would do here is go ahead and mix this section down. Anytime that I'm using a virtual instrument, I like to go ahead and commit it to audio. I like to look at the waveforms inside my DAW, make sure everything's aligned, and I find that it's more consistent if you get in the habit of when you're using a MIDI instrument to go ahead and commit it to audio. It goes ahead and creates an audio file within your session. So instead of leaving it MIDI information where your computer has to think about where that file is pulling from, we go ahead and commit it to audio, and that's the way I like to teach my students to work. I feel like this workflow really helps with being able to recall your sessions more easily. So again, now that we've got it out of Impact, we don't need Impact no more. We can remove track and instrument, and I'll call this snare 2. And now we can really zoom in here, and you could tell that whenever you bounce something, sometimes this waveform will kind of trail back on you. So just go ahead and make sure that everything is aligned, and now that the first one's aligned, I know that the rest are aligned. But we'll go ahead and give it a listen. Awesome, I love the way that that's sitting. Next thing I would do is just go through here and just kind of clean it up, take away the dead spots, just so I can kind of look at my session and see which parts I have those extra layers of snare. This is a drum layering tip that really makes the world of a difference in your drum mixes. So if you find that your snare drum or your kick drum or toms aren't cutting out of your mix like you want to, make sure to come up here, use this quantize function, change it to groove mode, drag your audio file in there, commit it to a MIDI file track, and add a different layer for your snare drum, and I guarantee that's going to get it to cut out of the mix, just like it did here. Snare layers in Studio One 5 using Impact XT. This is a trick that I'm using pretty much every mix that I'm working on these days. I encourage you to try it out. And if you learned something from this video, go ahead and give me a like, maybe a comment below. And if you want to learn more about producing pop country tracks, be sure to check out MusicCityPlaybook.com. We'll catch you guys in the next video.